Hello, everybody. We are back after game number one. A very one-sided affair for the majority. DK Crew, RBM, to your credit, they were hanging in a little bit there in the first couple of minutes, but things quickly took a dip. So you and the dog and Travesty, good company. But I think you might be
Yeah.
sweating on your predictions.
I mean, bro, if we're gonna draft like that, this is gonna be the world's fastest series. Like, I'm out of here. Like, I can't, man.
From
Yeah,
a
you
CMOL player,
were
that's fast.
Yeah.
you were fixated on the fact that we saw EGP get arguably like the three best picks on blue side in their first three lock-ins. What was going on there? Any predictions, RBM, as to what the thought process was on DK's side?
I don't know. We lost to Exodia in 1-2-3, and then like, if I'm playing, that game's getting paused. Like, we're remaking the draft. There's no way that's gonna happen again. So hopefully we get like an actual playable draft this time around. And our 1-2 is not Jinx Nautilus and do a B1 Zeri when Seraphine and Thanos are open in jungle role. So.
So, Armsy, break it down a little more for the folks at home. Why was this such a good draft from the side of EGP from the first three picks already?
Right, so we're in patch 12.12. Seraphine is the strongest champion right now. Yes, she has been hot nerfed after she got buffed, and she's still incredibly strong. She just gives so much sustain, so much wave clear from safety here, and she's a team fighting monster as well. She just has everything, which makes her strong. And then, of course, there's Udyr. We saw it yesterday. We just saw it in this game as well. You can't do anything to him. He just clears faster than you. He ganks as efficiently as you. And yeah, later on, good luck trying to stop him. We saw the flanks come through from Yukino on Udyr as well. Just so good. And Zeri, okay. Zeri, I don't know if Zeri's part of the Thanos necessarily, but it's
part of the
she's
Exodia.
a really strong
Part of the
pick.
Exodia.
Yeah,
Sure.
she's B1. She's strong. She's generally strong. And I'm not sure I'm liking the Jinx answer into Zeri right now. It just feels like a handshake at that point. And if you're going to handshake your AD carries like that in this sort of meta, then you need to build around that AD carry. And I wasn't seeing a lot of backup for Jinx. It was like, oh, frontline plus Jinx. And then you compare that to having the Seraphine for that Zeri, the Renata double enchanter for that Zeri, along with still having a frontline. It just felt like the EGP setup was so much easier to execute come mid late.
Something that RBM had been pointing out was that the frontline options, say, for DK needed to be ahead early on in the game. And as we take a look at the first replay, things were looking okay for DK Crew in the first couple minutes, right? Like, they had a little bit of a lead, but then as we look at this replay of this dragon fight, I mean, this is kind of where they had some semblance of control, RBM.
Yeah, this is where, like, okay, at this timer, there's no universe we're ever pulling Drake as EGP. Our mid laner is basing as well instead of this, and this is like the timer where Silas wants to fight and your Seraphine comp does not want to fight. This ended up getting them all caught up and getting a lead started for DK Crew, as well as the top lane dive that we didn't get to see early on, but the dive and top made Faisal really far behind for quite a while. And this is like started the snowball of, okay, maybe we could beat Exodia if we just never mess up.
Yeah.
Evan Earl getting a couple kills. Also, we saw Hybrid he was 2-1 at the top lane because he also barely wins the 1v1. So it was like, okay, maybe DK Crew can do it, right, RMC? Like, they have some gold in the early game. What was it, about like 1.5 thousand gold lead around the 7-minute mark?
Yeah, which is a pretty big margin at that point in time. And when you look at the way DK Crew's composition runs, there is a hope that they win, and that's kind of when they're ahead and they just keep running you down, forcing fight after fight after fight. Technically, at that moment, when Drake had finished, 6-something, 7 minutes, they were in a good position to do so. Like you mentioned, leads were hybrids in that top side. Their bot lane was ahead as well. Evan RL being able to pick up some of those kills and assists here. The problem is what happens after that. And if DK Crew can't push that lead, EGP just outscale. And huge props to EGP for just sitting back, like Rebel was saying, right? They knew that, hey, guys, we win this. Just play safe. Just play controlled. And they did that. And it really felt like, despite the lead DK Crew had, they were the ones with a noose that was slowly tightening around their necks.
Yeah, just keep scaling up, getting those dragons, stack them as much as you can, and then win through the objective game, win through the team fights, win through maybe some disjointed, I think is the mild way to put that, decision-making from the side of DK Crew. RBM, I know that you had some thoughts on how Shorter Ace and the rest of the team was playing, sometimes going in, sometimes going out, but never at the same time.
Yeah, they had like 3 sequences of plays that like threw the game over and over. This is one sequence where, okay, we're actually going to try to make a play after we've thrown the game a few times. We're committing back into mid lane, which again is something like relatively fine because we're involving the Kled, and their Kled was our strongest member. But unfortunately, Evan is not able to hit in the entire fight. The Seraphine ult goes wide from Heike Savage. the entire team just gets ran down. At this point, the game is just hard FF. Like, we can't win at all.
Yeah, and I think one thing to point out as well was sort of the way they came in from DK Crew. Clyde was not quite with the rest of the divers, unfortunately, and because of that, when they got hit by the hostile takeover, that's why Evan RL and Clyde just couldn't join the fight, and that's kind of symptomatic of what we saw from DK Crew throughout this game, that they just could not seem to get everyone together at the right moments to pull the trigger.
It felt like that was the final opportunity where DK was over-forcing, maybe. I mean, when you're going that far in, Doxa doesn't even have to flash to dodge the Nautilus hook, and then still has that to dodge the hostile takeover that Silas steals away. It's like you're fighting into their choke point, and that is where this composition was so strong for the side of EGP. Not only did they draft it well, but then DK, they kind of got to a desperation point where they had to overforce and overfight, overextend to get into zones where they felt like they could actually engage onto them. And then, of course, we all saw what happened at the end there. It was a one-sided affair for most of that game number one. So RBM, as we're looking at this, I want you to start thinking, formulating, and back up your boys. DK Crew, how are they going to bounce back here in a game number two?
We get a human draft. Like, we really need a human draft because that draft is
Don't think that's unplayable.
The DK Crew, man.
DK Crew.
Go back to Monka.
We need a human draft. I would prefer to get the Seraphine or the Udyr on our side because those are really like key tools we can work with. I'm fine with a handshake AD carry if we have to, because they're banning Kalista anyway, so we can't really play the like curb stomp enemy bot. Because none of the other curb stomp bots are really playable, except for like maybe you can Draven, but you have MRL, so like you can't really Draven. So it's like you kind of have to like match a scaling with a better scaling and hope that we can win that way.
RMC, what about your thoughts from the DK side? Quick thoughts, though, as we're getting ready for pick and ban. Is it decision-making, or is it just coming down to draft? What do you think is more important for DK to focus on?
Draft is the easier fix, but they need to fix discipline as well. They need to be on the same page.
I agree. Okay, there we have our analysis from my two analysts on the desk. But RMC, I think we can be happy with our predictions right now. 2-0 for EGP, easy peasy. And hopefully I'll still have a job after this because I believe Kelsey Moser is probably watching right now. So with that said, let's throw it back over to the casters, Grapes and Rebel, to get us ready for game number two.
Okay. Thank you, Kangas. I mean, Rebel, it was a very good game for EGP. And I know that we were talking about both on the desk and also in the post game about how the drafts for DK Crew might have, a couple of adjustments to be made, but I think a lot of that also, as RMC was kind of alluding to at the end of the desk, just comes down to EGP playing well, especially Mia down on the Zeri.
Yeah, we were talking about it just before we kicked back in about how well that Mia played around the bottom lane. We're like, you had this early advantage for the Jinx. You had a good, solid, at least brick of a bot lane to play around in this Jinx and Nautilus combination. And yet it seemed like every time we were preparing to see something happen on the side of DK Crew, where Volibear was going to come down, there was going to be some kind of action to bottom side, they were going to play the dragon, Mia pops ultimate, Mia dumps damage into the entire bot lane, and then usually it didn't lead to a kill, but what it did lead to was them not being able to play the game, or not being able to be there for whatever action was going to happen. I don't know if that's predicted timers, I don't know if that's somebody calling that, or if that is just individual performance from Mia, but it was miraculous to see again and again and again. I'm hoping this game they could get something that either competes against the Zeri in terms of range or early game to make sure that same kind of bullying can't happen, or they can at least play something more scaling, more safe, so that they don't have to worry about that. So if you get those 2 early kills, then you can defend it a lot easier.
I think it's fair to say it's like a little bit of both. It was, some of the champions maybe not working as well into Zeri, and then Mia also playing really, really well throughout. And so I think it's going to be a combination of things to get DK Crew back into this series. They are staying on the same side in the draft, sticking to that red half of the map. So when it comes down to things that they want to try to pick, it's going to be in terms of, countering what Evil Genius's Prodigies want to bring out.
It sure does. Evil Geniuses clearly had an identity for that first game. I think they've gone back to Olaf a number of times. You have to expect that coming out. Things that are really good at team fighting, things with through damage, things with mobility seem to be very, very valuable for Mia as well. And so you're thinking like Zeri and Twitch are the two that come to my mind immediately. Green champions is also another kind of a trait of those. So maybe you have to ban away green champions as well from Mia just to make sure that's not going to come through.
Cogma as well.
Cogma, yeah, gotta make sure that you're not gonna Callista, another one. But yeah, I think that to most part is like the two places that they fell apart the biggest. Where number one, they had a top lane advantage to start off the game, and then Hybrids lost it to Faisal, and eventually the Olaf was just better at doing what the Clyde was supposed to do, and Mia just kind of individually outperformed most of the team of DK, if not just Evan, RL, and Clyde after the first couple of minutes of the game. And so I'm anticipating that's where we get a good amount of our focus here in terms of drafting, just to try to help out on those two sides of the map.
Yeah, and if it's not, the super early aggression, maybe drafting a little bit more towards the scaling like RBM was trying to suggest. Can I just say how like confusing it is in my head that we have two of these like 3-letter start with R people on the analyst desk, like trying to figure out who's who. I'm sure Kangas is having, his own kind of struggles with going through that and trying to get through the desk as beautifully as he is right now. But let's see what DK Crew can do to try to get a little bit better into this game. It looks like we're seeing very similar bans as we had in game number 1, but there is that Zeri taken away from Mia.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be able to put together a musical number on our desk because they're run RBMC as a combination between the two, and that would be sick as another competitor to the DK rap. Everything drives the industry a little bit forward. But like I said, DK Crew's scared enough that the Zeri has to be taken off the board right now, and the Udyr comes right back to Yukino, which again, it was punished, I think, decently by Shorter Race in the previous game. So I'm a little shocked that they're just like willing to immediately go back to this. It's not a bad champion. It was played well, and it does incredibly good things. It's just that Shorter Race did find timers in the previous game to attack for his lanes, and I'm not shocked at all that DK Crew say, okay, we'll go right back to the same bear versus bear matchup.
Yeah, and I think that something that both Incon and RBM have said on the desk is that Udyr is Thanos. Basically, like, maybe in the beginning, not as strong, but as soon as you get a little bit later on into the game, you are basically unstoppable. And once you have all the farm, all the Infinity Stones, just looking to just absolutely take over the game. And that's kind of what we saw out of Yukino this time around in that previous games. And we take a look at the other side. It will be Shorter Race matching up the jungle, and we see the Ezreal come out for Evan instead of the Jinx.
Isn't Ezreal Thanos because he's got the glove?
That is true. Vi as well is banned away.
Oh, true.
Race.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. Now we're seeing the Thanos compositions. So who has more Thanos? You see, the problem is here. That's another greenish ADC, right? The eyes are green, and so that's an L right there from DK Crew. Unfortunately,
I will say Mia doesn't always play the Senna. Sometimes he can go towards Dawnbreak because
true.
Mia is a very flexible player, can play in a ton of different play styles. We saw Senna Karthus before from this team specifically. Maybe Senna Seraphine is something that can leave on the table, but a lot of scaling still on EGP, a lot of healing to keep this Udyr topped off.
And we talked about this in the pregame draft also. Is one of the things that I wanted to see upgraded most about DK's draft was specifically the Sylas, because it felt like last game the response of the Sylas to the Seraphine was that you can grab Encore, which is great. That's a great interaction. But outside of that, they didn't really take advantage of it. Savage didn't look like he was particularly feisty when it came to wanting to skirmish, wanting to fight, or when he did, it felt like it was really late. And so I want to see what they do to actually break out Savage in this game. Because if you're going to play the Sylas, I want to see it active early. I want to see it fighting. It's not super powerful, but it does skirmish really well at melee range when you have the ability to get on top of a number of members, especially into a team that, again, has this range advantage to kick things off, where you've got this Senna and this Seraphine, a lot of CC, or at least soft CC and damage and healing for the rest of your team. It's really hard to get into that core and cause a ruckus if you're not able to snowball the Sylas at least a little bit.
Yeah, and it seems a very similar style to game number 1, where DK Crew are saying, we're okay with all the scaling, all the long range that EGP is able to provide. We're just going to try to really hard engage, try to all in you, especially in the early game. And this Clyde pick on the Pike definitely accentuates that a little bit more.
It's an OG for Clyde, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
It was something he was known for a very long time. Again, he was a roaming support. This is one of the better roaming supports. This is one of his supports that he plays specifically. It's not shocking at all to see them, especially when their backs are kind of against the wall right now. If they lose this game, they're dropped into the lower bracket. It's so much harder to come back and try to make a run to make sure they're able to get into the main top 8, where those points are going to be a lot easier to get into proving grounds. And so they're going to comfort here to make sure it works. This composition from EGP is a lot different. It's not much different, but the key difference now is Seraphine going into Dawnbreak or Mia. Kind of depends on who wants which champion, but Doxa willing to step up and play something like the Yone for this team.
This Yone pick is something that has appeared a lot in the past couple of days. I think it was a big factor in both series on the Academy stream yesterday, and let's see if Doxa can pull it out. This Bork into Sunfire Aegis build has been really showing up across a lot of different regions and is looking really strong, especially with all the enchanters that EGP have on their side. It's going to be a very similar situation here, Rebel, where you have the Senna Seraphine and a huge front line that it's going to be hard to stop by DK Crew in the later stages of the game.
Yeah, it's really crazy because, again, you throw Udyr forward, you throw Olaf forward, you throw Yone forward with his E, and you can start fighting the opposing backline. And then if suddenly, you get impeached upon and your Senna, your Seraphine are in danger, you just snap E right back to the rest of your team and you've got Yone on top of everybody, which is kind of nice as gimmicky little interaction. But more importantly, like you said, they set up another death ball that's supported by this massive setup of this Senna Seraphine that they can support them from the back line really easily if they decide to take the fight against the front line. My one threat is that, again, Zeri is a little better about being able to kind of self-kite, self-peel, and get away from anyone who dives. So that means if Hybrids gets into the back line, Savage gets into the back line, it could be a little bit troublesome for Mia and Dawnbray back there. But other than that, it's a really menacing team that EGP is building on the dive potential, getting into Evan, getting into this line of champions that are trying to do damage.
Yeah, it seems, again, a very similar spot that DK Crew was in, where, if it's kind of a ticking time bomb on EGP's side. If you can get later on into the game, 20-25 minutes, it really becomes difficult to fight into this team if you're not drastically ahead. So that's what we need to see out of DK Crew as we get ready to head onto the Rift. We need to see Clyde be really proactive around the map. Shorter Race be just as aggressive as he was at the beginning of game number 1 and continue that further and further to keep that snowball rolling.
And goodness gracious, when you talk about the core of this DK Crew team, right? They're built on the bones of Harrisburg between Coach Tyler, but also Shorter Ray, Savage, and Clyde. And those are the three I'm looking at in this composition to get scrappy immediately in this game. They cannot let sit for even a moment. Their two team fighters are Evan, who you can rely on to team fight, and Hybrids is an amazing team fighter on this Gwen, which is a great team fighting champion in general to work with for the side of DK Crew. So it's all about setting the stage so that you can actually accomplish that. I'm looking forward to DK Crew again, taking what they did in the last early game and expanding on it even further.
We saw this, Gwen, Aatrox, champions that Hybrids can really work out in just being good in the lane, but also really taking over the team fights. We saw it in last 2021 on Winthrop University, getting them that collegiate title with Doxa on the other team as well. But the team fighting definitely is going to be big alongside Evan, who will basically, I'm expecting, play really, really far back because Clyde on this pick really wants to roam around the Rift, get all those kills, and that is what we are continuing to hammer home as we head onto the Rift for game number 2. It is aggression for DK. The Bananas got to be slamming in order to keep themselves alive.
I'm extremely, extremely excited to see DK Crew try this aggressive strategy a second time because it worked pretty well in the last game. And the EGP, again, to me, their backline is far more susceptible. So DK Crew have a little bit more of an opening. Now, out of fairness, if they falter at all with some of their frontliners, if they don't get tanky relatively quickly, it's going to be so ridiculously difficult for the side of DK Crew to stop this incredibly horrifying frontline, right? If you get Olaf and Udyr and Yone into a good position in a game, you don't have frontliners that can keep them from just ravaging health bars. It is the definition of death ball, right? It's the definition of they run at you and you aren't to do anything about it for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it a little bit in game number 1 where Yukino and Faisal on these champions were just really difficult to take down, and we're going to see it accentuated even a little bit more now with Doxa being just another backline dive threat on this Yone. Of course, with likely a bit of a tankier build than what we've been traditionally used to. Also important to note, Dawnbray will be piloting the Senna, which means Mia in a bit of a different spot than she was on the Zeri in game number 1, a little bit more of a supportive role.
Yeah, I do wonder if for some reason they decide to go for double Moonstone here because they're so faithful that Doxa, Yugito, and Faisal will do enough damage. They aren't traditional hard carries, but again, they're so hard to kill that if you went for some reason double Moonstone bottom lane and we're just okay, we're gonna perma heal them forever and not worry about it. Again, if you don't get a sizable enough advantage, or if you don't get somebody that can get through the health bars like the Ezreal, if the Ezreal isn't powerful enough at some point to fight in this game, that's just gonna be an absurdly difficult thing to have to deal with inside of the DK Crew. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they want some more damage, and the double Moonstone, it's not the greatest of ideas here, but it is definitely a possibility I'm keeping my eyes on for Dawnbray to potentially build outside of just Mia.
Yeah, it's hard to tell right now. Of course, both the champions running Airy versus maybe some other summoner spells, which might suggest a little bit more of a supportive playstyle. Oh yeah, we really can't tell quite yet. It is the Doran's ring start, but we gotta talk about this mid lane because Doxa is dashing forward, slashing forward. Will the ignite be enough? Barely able to not take down Savage, but what an aggressive play by the EG mid laner to start this game off.
Yeah, now you have to hold control here because the potions were held by Savage. He's gonna be at nearly equal health. If you keep auto attacking, you're gonna get a health back. But this was the real fear,
Yeah, Doxa, without the summoner spells, is going to get a collapsed upon. The aggression from DK starts early as Shorter Race picks up first blood.
Yeah, the problem was with Savage, with TP, it was going to be really hard to try to manage the wave right there from Doxa, and he almost certainly needed assistance from Yukino in order to actually fix what happened right there. I love that Shorter Race is able to get. Now, at least they get the flash out. That would have been a really easy situation to kind of just like run in and attempt to get him before anything else went down. But Shorter Race just wanted to confirm the kill, pops the flash, immediately gets the kill, and Savage ends up in a very good situation. It looked like Doxa had a solo kill under his belt here to kick off the game, and just a little bit of health difference, one pot of difference in terms of health from Savage really did make the difference between a kill going to Doxa, a solo kill for first blood, and a kill being shared between Savage and Shorter Ace for the first blood on the other side.
Yeah, it's a nice start for DK Crew, of course, but you saw them have a nice start in game number 1. They're going to have to continue to keep going forward, continue to keep going for these ganks. We see Shorter Ace right now at his red buff, maybe keeping his eyes towards the top lane. That's another potential opportunity. As the trading in the mid lane just doesn't seem to stop Rebel. Doxa not afraid to continue to get into Savage's face.
Which is good. I think it's better than what we saw in the previous game, where Savage again felt a little quiet into the Seraphine that Doxa played in the previous game. Now Doxa's on something a little bit more scrappy than we had seen in the previous game as well, so he's more willing to fight. But Savage definitely stepping up a bit more. Again, I talked about the champion feels a lot better when you can fight with it at the beginning of the game. You can take advantage of all this like auto attacking and scrappiness that he's got. The Kingslayer is super useful. The Abscond Abduct is a really good combination of abilities for exactly that as well. And last game it felt like it was missing from Savage at the beginning. So
Shorter Ace getting pressured a little bit out of his own jungle. Yukino going for potentially an invade. Mia and Donbray have the push down bottom, which gives them the opportunity to make this kind of play. Root's going to land immediately onto the Volley Bear. Is going to be rather tanky with this Sky Splitter. Donbray is going to get hooked over the wall, but Clyde taking a whole lot of damage. Going to have to dash away. Now Yukino still stunned up and still super tanky on this front line. Hybrid's already forced to pop the teleport early. Savage on the back line looking to try and find something. Donbray's going to get hooked up again. Hybrid's picking up another kill, and in comes Savage with the Abscond Abduct. Mia with a nice triple root to try and zone the rest of DK Crew away, but it might not be enough. Savage looking to maybe find a little bit more gap closed, try and lock down the Seraphine. Here comes the Abscond Abduct, will be flashed away from, but still 2 for 0 for DK Crew.
Okay, the trade-off, of course, is anything that Faisal gets on the top side of the map right now. So he's going to deny at least the one wave. He might deny a second wave, and he probably gets one plate, which is not fully a recompense for what just happened on the bottom side of the map, especially with the number of summoners that went down. As EGP, again, tried to lean into the bottom lane, tried to play down there. It's a little shocking, given that they've got the double support set up on the bottom side of the map at this moment, but it doesn't really matter at the second they go for it anyway. They aren't able to force into this team that's got some pretty safe members, as Donbray and Clyde are going to get after it right now.
Clyde trying to get that wave in, but I mean, Donbray is rather strong, playing the marksman actually in this situation, sort of, in quotation marks right now. So gonna get the better end of that trade. Looks like Clyde's gonna have to back, and EGP will maintain that freeze in the lane for Mia. Looking pretty good for them right now, despite the 2 kills going over, because Rebel, if the game stays at this state at this point, the scaling's still going to get there. So still more work for DK to do.
Yeah, but at minimum now DK Crew has set at least a solid precedent here for hybrids to be in a decent place. Up against the Olaf, it's still going to be a tough lane, especially after a lot of the solo gold went into Faisal just a second ago, denied a couple of the minions as well from hybrids. So there is some advantage to be held, but at minimum hybrids is going to be able to be more self-sufficient than we saw. It's the same with Savage, where inside of fights those two are going to be really powerful for the bigger engagements, the larger engagements, those types of things. As we haven't seen the neutral objectives start to go over, the scaling on this EGP team obviously is going to be there, but at minimum DK Crew have taken a step forward in making sure that their team is going to have some gold to start with, and they haven't given anything over quite yet.
They're still looking for a little bit here. Yukino gonna secure that Scuttle Crab and gonna force Shorter Race now out of the river. Dragon is up for the taking. It looks like DK want to try to fight for this. Savage does not have a whole lot of mana, but is still gonna try to go in. The Fate Seal is stolen away and will get 2 knocked up, but Mia secures the first kill of the fight. Now Yukino looking to try and chase down Shorter Race. Clyde forced to dash away as well. EGP get their first kill of the fight and priority around the Dragon Pit.
And it seems like DK Crew, they rush in with Shorter Race. They kind of lost priority on bottom side, and so it's the bottom lane from EGP that show up first, and then slowly everyone everyone trickles in from DK, but they never quite got an opportunity where everyone was on the same page right there. It looked like Savage wanted something. He had the flash, he had the ultimate from Yone, he wanted to find multiple members, and he did find two, but there was no one behind him. Once again, it feels like an engagement from DK Crew where not everyone was ready and raring to go all at one time, and because of that, again, EGP just walk away with the punishment of the DK Crew losing too much. Now Clyde actually might lose quite a bit. Okay, he's just gonna walk away.
Oh, dash forward here from Evan. Shorter Rate's in the area, does have that Stormbringer, but the wave not in a good spot to try to turn off the turret and go for a dive. Looks like me and Dondre going to survive for just a little bit longer here, and it doesn't look like a play to be made by DK Crew. So EGP kind of getting a little bit back into this game. They pick up the Dragon, even up the goal at about 200.
But again, the fear of this bottom side right now isn't nearly the fear I think you should have if you're on the side of DK Crew. They're not playing as much into like their bottom lane. It's not like they're giving Evan a head. It feels like they're trying to play to counteract Mia and Donbray's action. But again, your terrifying part of this composition really is the Deathball top trio of this game. And Faisal has been basically on his own most of the game. Doxa did at least die at one point, but isn't really down in terms of gold or not that much resource comparative to his opponents. And again, Yukino is just completely farming up, being the same menace that they were in the previous game. We're going to see an incredibly powerful collection of melee champions to work with. This Clyde doesn't have level 6, so it doesn't really matter. The exhaust was popped anyway. Maybe the ignite, maybe one more Q might have done it. Mia, maybe knowing the damage numbers so well, knowing that like if you don't, then Clyde is immediately going to dump everything and just try to get that kill. So just burns the exhaust as it's not that big of a cooldown anyway.
Yeah, now Clyde making his way down over to the mid lane. Doxa will be able to spot him out. Not entirely sure where he is just yet. We'll be able to zip right back in off of the tether. And now 3v2 has emerged. Yukino and Donbray here to help Doxa clear the wave out. Rift Herald is up for the taking, and it looks like EGP want to start it up.
They're going to kick things off, and there's no competition for the most part because again they've got everybody except for Mia up here ready and raring to go. These are the powerful members of their team right now because it's the earlier stage, so you got the Olaf and the Udyr who are both willing to fight for melee range. If you want to go contest them, you're welcome to do so, as it's a dive potential set up on the bottom side. But again, Mia's not going to fall for it, going to stand so far back to make sure. I guess it's Evan that's going to be the beneficiary here, trying to get him some plate gold, trying to get him 2 right now in exchange for the Rift Herald. Ends up being an even trade if nothing else comes through. But ultimately, again, there's more potential, I guess, for gold here on the side of EGP if they can make that Rift Herald very, very effective. At minimum, it's DK Crew getting gold in the right place because, again, it's Evan who's able to be the beneficiary. He's the one that's going to be interacting with these melee members the most by just dumping damage into the front of his team.
I think bot lane's the focus here as Yukino is trying to bail out Mia and Donbray a little bit, doing a good job at staying safe under the tower to make sure that they weren't under the threat of a dive, but all nonetheless losing a little bit of farm under their own tier 1. Evan gonna try to use the True Shot Barrage to clear out a little bit. That's not the focus for DK Crew right now. Evan is just trying to stay alive as the Rift Herald is popped.
They're going to dump all of this plate gold potentially into the bottom side of the map just to make sure that Donbray and Mia are in a comfortable place. And again, it's actually not support for either of them. There's no Moonstone on the Seraphine, there's no Moonstone on the Senna. It's just going to be damage from the two of them as 2 additional numbers to throw in some more stuff. And again, they're going to be supported one way or another, right? Like they're still healing from the Seraphine, they're still healing from the Senna. It's just that they're also now going to be menacing inside of a team fight because they're pulling more resources as a result of this tower going down. Maybe this is an adaptation from EGP because again, I feel like you could have just said, hey, Olaf will carry this game, hey, Yone will carry this game, focus on top side and really let bottom lane be. But instead, they're putting this resource into Mia and Donbray to get this gold and to be kind of menace champions as the game goes on, be really difficult to try to deal with as these double damage enchantery type champions.
Can I just say, it's very impressive watching Mia and Donbray play through this lane. You have Clyde, who's continually trying to look for engages, look for these hooks, but it looks like these two players are just always on the right set of mind. They know when they're gonna be under threat and know when to back off at the right moment, and you can see how they've been able to maintain not necessarily a lead, but at least keeping themselves in an even game state, especially when you consider all the aggressive champions that DK Crew want to throw at them.
Yeah, it's a matter of, like, it feels like EGP is playing to the bottom side, like, dumping some resource to bottom side, but equivalently, they're also, like, cool with them just sitting there and taking, any type of aggression that DKQ is going to put their way, because they don't really care. If they give them the response, they're going to take advantage of it. You can see right now, as 3 members topside to punish Hybrids, he's going to die.
Yeah, a bit of farming in the top side, but that's going to end right now. Faisal has bided his time and picked up the kill onto Hybrids. Yukino does fall, though, and in comes Savage in with the Stolen Fate sealed. Shorter Race picking up a kill. It is a 2-for-1 for DK Crew.
just faster reinforcements coming in from DK Crew. And Hybrids lived a lot longer into the tower than I think was anticipated from the side of EGP, because you use the W, you're able to block some of the range damage, but also it's just like the last auto or two seemed like it basically did nothing because of Hybrids healing, having the Q, having the leeching layer at this point in the game. And because of that, I think they just weren't anticipating one extra tower shot coming in, and that allowed Savage to kind of catch them at the last possible minute. The Chains were able to get it, the Flash wasn't able to, they didn't have the Flash available to actually get out from under the tower if they needed it, and so it ends up being a really positive play for DK Crew as they make the response to the topside play.
Actually dead even in gold right now, but looks like that might change a little bit soon. I'm expecting a fight around the Dragon here, Rebel. Looks like both teams want to try to get around it. DK Crew going to be the one to start it up. Kino does have the smite if he wants to try to get in, but instead, looks like they're going to seed it, maybe look for other pressure in the mid lane.
Yeah, again, it's EGP actually playing quite a bit slower than they did in the previous game. And last time they had the Olaf, they had the Udyr, they had the same combination. And their bottom lane was able to absorb some resource, and they were able to fight, I think, a little bit earlier. But now that you don't have a champion that's got a bunch of damage to kick off the game, or at least damage from a range to interact with the other team with, Mia and Donbray, I don't think can play as aggressively, and they're not quite pushing the envelope nearly as much as I think they could be with their Olaf on the top side of the map. And so because of that, it's actually been a quiet game. Is again, DK Crew are going to find out Yukino here.
Yeah, Stormbringer forward. Yukino has to run the wrong way, and Clyde gonna flash to maintain the stun. Not enough HP to be at the threshold for the death from below just yet, but in comes the reset, the cash in for Clyde. And DK Crew looking to push the pace. Hybrids coming in, looking to get down Mia with the needlework. The snip comes through. There comes the abscond of Duck Savage with another kill. It is 6-2 DK Crew as they maintain the aggression, finding the right fights.
And TP back to top lane just did a nice Faisal any additional gold, because if you don't, then again, he just pulls first tower and it ends up not being that big of a deal, especially with the plates going down. Just ends up being really valuable. As this was the play, because Yukino, I think, was going in to try to counter jungle a little bit of something, and DK Crew was just here and ready and raring to go. They've got the double enchanter, but they were split so far. Savage made sure that was going to be the case, and Hybrids roaming down from topside really is what sealed the deal right here, because again, there was just nothing you could do. There were 5 members of DK Crew here. You were down, you were split. There was not much for you to accomplish. It was really heavy leaning into the side of the map that they had power on the side of the DK Crew. Ends up working out for them. Again, they're only up 500 gold for how much they just throw their weight around in a game like this, but you feel so much better that you've got gold in your top laner, in Hybrids. You've got gold especially in Savage, which is something you did not have in game number 1.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has been facilitated by Shorter Race on this Volibear. 1-0 and 3 has a completed Turbo Chem Tank, and it's very different playstyle from Yukino, because he doesn't necessarily care about all the resources. He just wants to go for the ganks. Actually, in this little survey that we did, Shorter Race was asked, if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go? You know what his answer was, Rebel?
Where was his answer?
McDonald's. So he doesn't actually, he doesn't need the high budget everything. He just needs to, be chill, get a couple McNuggets, and be along on his way, as long as it's helping out the rest of his team.
Where's Wildcard when you need them, man? Like, he would have had a job instantly.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. And of course, Myra over on CLG Faith. You can watch them later on Path to LCS. Pop in a couple of minutes against AoE Ginger Turmeric. That's going to be a good series. But right now, you just stay tuned here, because I think DK Crew, they have something rolling here, Rebel. They're looking to try and, dang it. I tried to do like a McDonald's pun again. It's too hard. It's too hard.
Serve up a McWin? Something like that?
Yeah, something. Myra can help me on that.
A McChickWin? That's the closest I can
Oh!
Yeah, that's
okay.
a solid one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the best we're going to do, I think. So we're going to cut that out as fast as possible. We're not trying to get DMC'd right now for talking about McDonald's.
There's too many memes with this team. You got Shorter Race saying McDonald's. You got, of course, the entire premise of this team, and I think that's kind of what encapsulates them as a bit. They're here as really strong players, but also here to have a little bit of fun, and talking to some of the players and some of the coaches. That's kind of the dynamic that has been maintained throughout the scrims and all the practices that they've been doing, which is really good to hear.
Yeah, it is. They're playing a lot more, I think, unleashed than what you normally see these players play. We talked about that sentiment, I think, in game number 1, and it showed quite a bit. Just as a quick recap of everything that's happened in our Goonery in the last second, Rift Herald got taken by EGP. There was no response. It looks like a defense of the Dragon for DK Crew, as they've got kind of control of mid lane into bottom side, and it's a minute until the next Dragon comes through. Maybe willing to fight. Again, they've got a slight gold advantage. They're feeling like with their Volibear, with their Silas at this point, even with the Pike execute, they're feeling great about the position they're going to be in. If they can get Ezreal going now, that's the transition they're looking for. Can they put Ezreal or Evan Aurel into a good spot where the damage is going to be sufficient to work your way through Faisal, Yukino, Doxa even though you've got Seraphine Senna behind them, because neither one of them went for the support, so they don't have the same kind of support behind them that you would be looking for. That opens the door that if Evan, again, gets to 3-4 items, and you can actually start doing damage to these champions somehow, that's where DK Crew can start to try to transition to the late game, maybe look for a contest. But in the meantime, again, EGP has slowly just climbed back into place. They actually just took a 500 gold lead. They got the Rift Herald that they're able to utilize anytime they want. Here's Yukino, who's going to drop behind the tower. They're going to catch out Savage. They're trading all this for that dragon.
Alone. Look at the minimap right now. Literally nobody on DK Crew is here to try and save Savage. They're going to attempt something, and actually, Savage going to come in with the Everfrost and take down Dawnbray in the 1v3, and in comes Hybrids now, unlocked with the Needlework, looking to chase down the rest of EGP. Really nicely played by Savage, stealing away the Fate Sealed and stealing away a kill.
Yeah, the question now is, was this whole thing worth it, I guess, for DK Crew, right? Because they just burnt TP, they burnt multiple ultimates coming through. They're still going to get Dragon, it looks like, as well. And this was in the exchange of, I guess it was just the Silas not going down, and then top tower is just, it's probably like a solid gust away from getting knocked over and just toppled in place like a tower of a Jangle box right now. So there is that to consider, but at minimum, DK Crew do fall to the defense of their top side. They get a couple more kills. They get more gold into Savage, which is incredible. So they're looking good still. They're still competitive. But again, for a game where they have been the ones, they're up 7-2 right now. They've got 2 dragons. They are even in gold. That is the thing that is working right now for DK Crew.
They got to keep going. Of course, the kills are much more in their favor than the gold might suggest, but it just means that, you know, EGP is still doing a good job at farming up, and it means that DK Crew have to just keep trying harder and harder to keep themselves in a good position to even up this series. And that was a really nice play coming out from both Hybrids and Savage there. You know, only burning 1 TP, you retain a lot of that power that you have on the bottom side of the map. Allows for that 2-to-1 dragon advantage to be opened up, and maybe that's another angle where you can try to counteract some of the scaling here for EGP here, Rebel, is if you can get that soul, get even more damage in the later stages.
Yeah, not to mention playing into a death ball composition inside of quotes. Having the Hex Tech Drake is super valuable because, again, it's static shivs, so you get damage, which is nice. Like, true damage is always nice to attack on top of things. But again, slowing down Udyr, slowing down Olaf before he pops Ragnarok, slowing down Rubione, it means that it's more difficult to get into position, especially when you're already having problems trying to get on top of Ezreal. If he's able to drop free damage from the Hextech Soul into this team, and again, if they're running at you and you're slowing them down, they are going to be pissed about it. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And so if they get to that point, again, I think DK Crew pulled a solid Drake for trying to scale into a game like this. And again, EGP just kind of going through the motions. They've picked up what they've been able to. They haven't made really heavily forcing plays quite yet, because I think they're anticipating that their composition will still scale, will still do well. And again, even after all these things we've said, EGP are still the ones with the gold lead at this point.
It seems like they're still able to get so much. We saw Doxa basically pressure out Hybrids to take that top tier, to get that priority in the top side. Going to be almost surely to take down that inner turret as well. And it's just hard to kind of match the kind of power of the champions on EGP, because even though DK Crew are doing a good job at making sure that they get a lot of their players ahead, specifically Savage here on the Silas, the scaling is still coming through for EG, and still going to have that death ball that is going to be used so effectively, especially with these enchanters that don't need a whole lot of gold to be successful.
No, I want to note really quickly that, again, my anticipation was, like, if they're going to be going double enchanter, we could see, like, the Sunfire, or we could see crit if they want more damage out of Doxa. They don't go enchanter on Seraphine or Senna, and also don't go Sunfire on
So they're just, yeah,
this is like 5 econ champion right now. This is like absurd coming out from EGP. Everybody wants to carry to pretty high extent. And again, nothing is preventing them from doing so. DK hasn't been able to stop them from getting gold. They're up now 1,500 even after we just checked in seconds ago. It was just funny noticing that literally, like, I was like, okay, they could do Sunfire with double Moonstone, be fine, but I think crit would be better. And they just go crit and then double damage itemization in their bot lane. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's kind of the philosophy that I think really was prevalent when this EG roster was announced. You can carry in all 5 positions, and it looks like they're all trying to do a little bit of that right now. You know, you have the full damage build coming out for Mia, of course, making a bit of a pit stop with that Chemtech Putrefier to make sure the Grievous wounds go all throughout. But yeah, you know, pretty high damage, pretty high econ, as you were saying. And they have the ability to do this at this point, Raul, because they are still in the driver's seat in terms of gold.
They are. And they've got decent advantages in mid lane. Like, it's 20 CS advantage, 15 CS advantage in mid lane. Right now, 50 CS for Faisal. Faisal is absurdly strong again. This Olaf is going to be...
Evan RL! Where did Dawnbreak go? Just 100-0 poof going out.
He's on 2 full items. He's got Essence Reaver Monami, and I've been waiting for the damage to finally come through, but Evan has been left alone as well. You know, EGP aren't the only ones that have something to do in the later stages of the game. Evan doesn't have the damage to bring down Yukino yet, but hopefully he gets to a point where the damage can start to stack up from the rest of his team, so that can actually start to come through. Because again, my one bet for this late game is that with Evan on Ezreal and you dump in damage into anybody in front of you, if you've got Clyde and he's able to bring down like Olaf before Olaf is able to really touch your team, start sustaining up to like infinite levels of healing to make sure you don't die, they're going to be fine, or they're going to have ways to try to like end skirmishes a little bit faster than what you normally expect. I think this actually might cost them Dragon here. They pushed up on bottom side, but Evan is completely out of this one with no teleport. So I don't know if they're going to be able to have the river pressure they had in the last 2 Dragons at least.
Yeah, him and Clyde are going to have to go for the reset. Again, not the end of the world to give up this Drake for EGP, but you sure would like it if you are DK crew. You're making sure that you keep the pressure on. You're going to see the teleport in, I believe, from Savage to get out of the map a little bit early. And Shorter Race is around the pit to make sure that he can contest the objective as he waits for the rest of the team to arrive.
Yeah, they want to walk in. Right now, they have forcing moves, right? I think they have Shorter Ace, they've got Savage. Oh, they're going to move now.
Yeah, looking a little bit early, but in comes the teleport. It will be Faisal joining the fray. Savage chunked about half HP, and now it is EGP with control over the pit. It will even out the dragon count at 2-2 if they're able to secure it. Shorter Race, again, does have the smite. Not necessarily in position to go for it, as DK crew, they want to dance. They want to fight here in the 5v5. Hook's going to go wide on Yukino. In comes Shorter Race with the Stormer, going to get a little bit closer to the action. And now Hybrid's going to have to dash away. Faisal still so tanky. The charge going to land all the way down onto Savage, and Hybrids will die first in the fight. Faisal continuing to be so strong on this front side. Yukino picking up the kill, and now it's a 3v5 for the side of DK crew. What can they do? Dragon secured, route in onto Clyde. Mia is a bit low, but it's not going to matter. In comes the Fate Sealed from Doxa. Evan is so tanky, but he's not going to die just yet. And it looks like that will all be all she wrote here for Evil Genius's Prodigies. They get 2 kills, they even up the dragon count, and they are once again in a good spot.
DK crew forcing into the river to the best of their abilities. They don't get the dragon, they don't get the team fight win, and at no point did it look like Savage was actually looking to try to turn this fight. I wanted to just take a look. He's got Yone ultimate right now, and just keep a look at how many times this team is stacked together that maybe they could pull the trigger. They're just waiting for the perfect moment, but it just apparently never comes to them. They try to wrap back around. This dragon is almost certainly entrenched enough for never be contested. They're looking for a fight on the side of DK crew right here if they're going to do absolutely anything. The Shorter Race just engages the other jungler on the front end of this. But again, Savage, 3 members on the left you could have tried to go onto right there, and then they lose Hybrids on the front end of the fight, not able to accomplish right here. Right here, 4 of them stacked together potentially for the Yone ultimate, and he's not able to find the angle before it expires, and it's really unfortunate. Evan doesn't have the damage to carry through a lot of these members, again, especially with the healing that's being added on. And so right now, they have to rely on additional damage sources coming in. So again, not popping that Yone ultimate feels like it was a complete, like that might have been a difference maker in the fight that could have turned things. I don't know that it would have won them the fight, but at minimum, I would have liked to see it thrown out there. Because again, Savage, like he's got some damage.
Yeah, and you can see there on the gold graph, the damage graph in that last fight, it was Evan with the most amount of DPS throughout, but the rest of the team, specifically Savage, who is still 4-1-1, weren't really able to do a whole lot against EG Prodigies, and this is the start of that death ball that we were talking about at the beginning of this game. Rebel but DK, they are feeling a little bit desperate potentially, starting up the Baron Nashor. Savage has a good flank and a land a 2-man charm, and this could be the opportunity that they need. Mia goes down, Dawning Shadow just a little bit too late. Clyde's going to flash forward to maintain the stun. A double kill in for Hybrids, and DK go 2 for 0 with the Baron in their sights.
And that's what we're looking for from the side of DK crew. They find a very quick and snappy fight with information that multiple members on the bottom side of the map. They take advantage of it. Now they're going to go for Dragon, as you know, there's ultimates on a couple of different places. Right now we're looking at Doxa that's got his, Faisal's got his as well to try to get into this pit to the best of their abilities.
Doxa, their ultimate is going to go wide. Doxa's going to get locked down. We'll get the tether down to about 1 HP, but Shorter Race goes down. It is now no jungler on either side. Baron is at 1,000 HP, and DK crew somehow are going to be able to secure it. Savage going to go forward, missing out on the chains. But now Clyde looking for it. The reset has expired, so no chance at that death from below. But Savage, he's looking for the damage. He's looking for the kills. He's looking to try and even up the series. But in comes Doxa. He's going to get 1 kill. He's going to get 2 on the backside. Somehow evening up this count at just a little bit longer. Now Savage actually might be in a bit of a bad spot. Doxa is in the between the 2 members here of DK. Looks like Savage is going to be able to escape. They are going to get the Baron, but a pretty costly one at that.
Yeah, they pull a couple of members, 3 without Baron buff now on the side of DK Crew. So yes, you get the gold infusion and you're up, or you're at least closer within 1,000 gold of EGP. You do have the Baron buff to be able to shove with, so maybe next Dragon's going to be really easy for you to actually set up for, because you throw Baron into 2 lanes on bottom and in mid, and actually look to push for the Dragon, get the 3rd Dragon, so you can set up for that Hextech Soul. But ultimately, we are still back and forth between these 2 teams. Even to this point in the game, it feels like no one can actually grasp a pure advantage over top of the other one. We've been so pitter-patter about who's in the lead due to scaling, due to like he was making plays, DK Crew finally collapsing on things, DK Crew throwing a fight, getting objectives, winning a fight around Baron, that it's just so tough to predict how this game is going to end out at the moment, because we're still anticipating this massive spike from EGP, and the window is closing for DK Crew, but they're not letting us forget that they have some ability to fight back in this game.
It's a sort of creative play that, you know, DK Crew was talking about being their specialty, being able to, you know, find different angles like that Baron, and Savage doing a really good job at making sure that they were able to lock down Mia specifically at the beginning of that fight. And without that one half of the supportive composition, the death ball doesn't necessarily become as strong. So now DK Crew, you know, not necessarily in the best spot, especially after losing some members in the Baron, and they might lose another one at that. Shorter Race going to get taken down as Mia will secure the final blow.
Tries to jump over the wall. Even if he gets over the wall, like, Yugen's still there waiting for him. Maybe he has enough health to get out if he uses Blue Smite and he's able to kind of outrun at least one person. But right there, missing that was definitely a death sentence, as he also burns Flash, and even with the Flash, that ends up with 4th, as now EGP's just running down the mid lane.
Evan up to burn everything, but will still get locked up by the Charm. Doc's on a rampage, and now Savage might have arrived a little bit too late. The Charm will be good, but Yukino is so tanky on the front line. Finally, we got taken down by Clyde, who gets his first reset of this potential extended engage. Hybrids finally will get taken down. Doxa barely misses out of the Pike Gult, and that just might be the game. Despite the Baron buff being in the hands of DK Crew, EGP get a 5-for-1.
Again, they were able to find the first member, which is Shorter Ace, then they just kind of pick members away, and they didn't have necessarily the bones to fight up with this gold advantage, or this kind of gold being really even. But unfortunately, when you lose an entire member on DK Crew, that's going to be that. That's going to be the end of the game, and EGP is going to walk away with a win, and what was it, incredibly fast. I mean, this had to be like 2 minutes ago. We were like, oh, they're pretty even. Baron buff should set up a Dragon for DK Crew. Maybe they'll have some momentum going in. It took one set of plays, one individual pickoff for EGP to just swarm like sharks smelling blood in the water as they wrap up game 2 in easy, and the series, I guess, in really easy fashion.
Really good showing out of the LCS affiliates to make sure that, you know, they were basically at the spot that they were expecting themselves to be, making sure that they're dominant over teams that are kind of on that bubble of the top 10 and really contending for the top of the top. Now moving on to the upper bracket, only one more best of 3 to secure themselves a return to the quarterfinals. And DK Crew had the right opportunities. They, you know, were looking for the potential engages a little bit more than they did in game number 1, but again, with the composition that EGP set up, just didn't seem like it was enough.
Yeah, and again, with every win and loss, we're kind of inching closer and closer to figuring out who our top 10 teams, who our top 6 teams are. And EGP is competing not just for like a top 10 spot, for a top 6 spot. And so making sure to get to the next round is going to be very beneficial, because again, they got the top 8 last time. This confirms them another set of points. And DK Crew falling is really problematic, because now Supernova on the other side, if they happen to take a win against Maryville, you basically have to make a miraculous run through both Maryville and then also whoever your next round opponent is to make it into playoffs, and maybe even win in a 3rd, 4th if you're DK Crew, just to beat them out for like that 10th place spot. Because right now, that's really your gatekeeper is Supernova on the other side that we'll see a little bit later. So DK Crew, they're not out yet, right? They're still going to be banana slamming their way to try to make it into PG, but they have nothing but uphill, nothing but trees to climb in front of them to make sure they can get there.
Yeah, but that's what they're used to, swinging around the vines, making sure that they're always within the thick of it, you know, as we will see them a little bit later in about a week or so against the loser of our next matchup. But that's going to do it here for us on the caster desk, at least for this first series. I'm going to go change out of this because it didn't look like the DK fashion was on my side. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Kangas will be talking with Don Bray about the win.
Hello, everybody. We are back here with our winner's interview with Don Bray from Evil Geniuses Prodigies. Congratulations off of the victory right there. Swift 2-0, and I want to start with that because I had RBM on the desk with me, Don Bray. I know that you and him have a relationship, you a little bit of maybe friends, maybe rivals, I don't know, based on some of the things I heard him say about you. But he had his own thoughts on the draft and how Exodiad it was on your side. I want to get your thoughts on it. What was going on in comms with the team during that draft phase?
Yeah, so I don't know what the enemy team was doing, but we got a bunch of OP champions, so it was like really easy to play for us, and yeah, that's how it happened, I think.
Did you have like Like, did that match your prep going into the series, or did you just like have to throw prep out the window because you just got literally all the best champs?
Yeah, I don't know. Our coach was kind of smurfing. I don't have like 50 drafts ready, so we just like did that. It was kind of good.
All right, a little bit of coach diff. I want to call any out by name.
No, I don't know.
all right. We don't give the coaches name recognition on this stream. It's all about the players.
Yeah.
Dombre, speaking of the players and the gameplay, I gotta ask. That's Senna in game number 2. I don't know. There are a couple deaths going on there. I want you to. I'm going to give you an opportunity to defend yourself here. What was going on?
I don't know. Pyke is just an OP champion. Like in lane, he's so OP. Okay, just try. Like I banned that champion in solo queue. It's just like super cringe champion.
All right, so we're gonna call it the Pyke is the issue. It's not aggro or pulling aggro in the top tier 2 turret dive.
Yeah, it's not a player thing. It's a champion thing.
Okay, all right, clearly. So Senna gameplay. How would you rate it? 10 out of 10. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, that's pretty good. 10 out of 10.
All right, 10 out of 10. Perfect. Next question. Why didn't you fill out the questionnaire, man? We have these questionnaires that we send all the players with fun questions so we can reference them on these interviews, but I got nothing from you, dude. I got nothing to work with.
Really? I don't know. I didn't get one. I don't know. I didn't see anything.
You didn't? Wait a minute. You didn't get one.
Who's
the player manager? Who would get the? If we had sent one to the team, let's do some investigative reporting right now. Who did not give you the player questionnaire?
I'm not sure. Maybe Ido, I guess. He's the coach, so yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this because we need these answers going forward. And then final question for you, because I had RBM on the desk. I asked all the analysts, is there anything that you would like me to ask Don Bray while we have the opportunity? And he said, how much do you love RBM?
I mean, he's all right, I guess. He's cool. I don't know.
He's all right?
Yeah, he's all right.
Okay. All right, just all right. Well, I'll let him know that you said that. Thank you so much, Don Bray. Any final message to all the fans out there?
Thank you, I guess. Yeah. The fans are cool.
All right. Fans are cool, and I'm sure that you'll have plenty more after that incredible interview. Thank you so much, Don Bray. We'll get you that questionnaire so you can fill it out for next time, all right?
Okay, cool. That's good.
All right, thanks so much for stopping by. Congrats on the win. And now we'll bring back on the analysts to continue on here in Proving Grounds. RBM, you're only okay. Only okay.
It's better than what most people say about me, so that's pretty good.
The standards are low in this.
All right, fair enough. But the 10 out of 10 Senna gameplay, RMC. I mean, I know that we were kind of memeing a little bit in the chat. Do you concur?
It's a 10. I won't say what the other number is on that particular scale. But you know what? A win's a win, and EGP will take that here. And hey, fair play to Dombre. I probably couldn't pilot it better into a Pyke. It is really hard, and it was Clyde's Pyke. So
Sure. Well, let's give our final thoughts on the game overall then, because that was a 2-0 from Evil Genius Prodigies. RBM, I want to give this one to you first. Thoughts on the Prodigies and how they were able to close out this series, and kind of your big takeaway after watching this best of 3.
For this perspective of EGP, you don't really get to learn anything when the enemy coach just like when the draft is so unplayable every game. So it's like EGP from their point of view is like they didn't really have to show anything. Like they just picked OP champs and won the game for free. So it's like those are like the best wins as an amateur team, especially in a tournament format. It's because like the next round opponent is like, well, guys, if we didn't learn anything because they didn't draft like humans, so it's like it's like super OP for them going forward, and it's a great win for them as well. And they really played super well. Faisal especially played well in his lane the second game. Donbray and Mia picked it up as well, and were respectful on their weak side timers as well. Yukino Cat just got the turbo chill on the Udyr. So,
well, I think RBM has a player perspective there, but I think from a coach perspective, I might not agree there with how game 2 kind of went, because EGP I think stalled out quite a bit in the early game, right? They had such a strong composition, and yet they had a couple of questionable plays which ended up extending the early game or the mid game rather significantly there. And I think there are areas for EGP to work on. I'm sure they'll be going back looking over that, especially when the other two teams in your group are Supernova and Maryville, both known to be incredibly strong strategic teams here. You make that sort of mistake against them and they will hammer you for it.
And speaking of, we actually have some replays to kind of highlight how Evil Genius Prodigies was able to close out that last game. So as we take a look at the first one, like you said, they kind of stalled out a little bit in the early game, which is now twice in a row against DK, where they were losing in the early game, and gave over a couple of those dragons. We were joking that, the longer this game goes, the better it is for Evil Geniuses. So it's not like they were sweating necessarily having the game go late, but it was interesting to see that twice it got away from them.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that this particular replay is actually the one fight that EGP kind of gets to win here. This is their first team fight. Before this, I think they only had 2 kills at this point. And you can see that when they execute the composition right, like RBM said, it's kind of Thanos. It's such a strong composition. Even with how awkward the start of this fight is, you can see that anytime you're in a choke point, it's just so hard to fight into Seraphine. But the fact that the fight is as close as it is, and I believe this is roughly about 24 minutes into game, Baron is already up and available, the fight should be a lot cleaner for EGP at this point. The reason why it wasn't was because of that extended mid-game.
That 4-champ Seraphine ult, RBM, I know that we were freaking out over that. Like, okay, this champ's just disgusting. Did the most damage in that fight, too. So, still, maybe a little bit of draft diff.
Oh, it was a draft kingdom for sure. But Mia played that fight super well. Respect flashing instantly from the side of C, and then re-wrapping around to the right side. Play with her front line on Udyr, ult through him, and then get the 3-man ult through the choke point is really, really good. I mean, from the player perspective, in order to fix this early game, and like from coach and player perspective, Yukino Ka has to stop trolling as hard, because the level 4 push out of mid wave into Grop invade is really, really troll, because your mid laner, you're pushing out so your mid laner can base and reset his stats. So all you have to do is push the wave out and then go back to your top side and then full clear downward again, and then you could contest the Drake afterwards. That's kind of how you could fix the early game this time around. This last early game was just the top lane dive, because we didn't path to the top lane dive as Udyr again. So it's just like a few pathing issues that we need to calm down and not try to invade or play to fight when we have like Exodia calm.
But what I love about that is that there are 2 things that I think are fairly easy to cover in a VOD review. If you're going over that gameplay, you can look at those 2 moments and be like, all right, look, these are things that you can easily change going into a future series. But as we look at our final replay of the day for this particular series, we get to look at the Baron fight that DK, they get the Baron, but then they lose the game like right afterwards. It was actually insane. But this was kind of like the big play where they almost got the game back in their control.
Yeah, so at this point, like, you're getting Thanos done, you're gonna get Turbo scaled, so flipping a Baron is like actually like super good call. And from this play, you should just take the kills. You got 2 pike resets as well, so there's 2 extra cuts, and then just go fix your waves. Go catch the top wave, play for top lane tier 1, invade the blue buff base to the mid lane tower as well. Like that's kind of like the sequence that you want to end up going through instead of this, because again, you can't really just pull the Baron. And even though they do get it, they could have just based again afterwards, because they still would have been fine. But they overchased, and Doxa was able to punish them through mid lane from overchasing and not resetting and taking our small leads. It was like just really sloppy for DK crew. A lot of the series, like, they had mixed ideas throughout how to play the game or what they're doing throughout the play. Like game 1 especially, they have like Volibear ulting out while Nautilus is hooking in. This game is Doxa is going on side lane flank while Heike Savage is just chasing after Seraphine for fun. So like we didn't really have like a lot of communication going through to each other.
Well, but I do want to give DK Crew credit for the moments of brilliance they have, because while it's true, they did have a lot of disjointed moments, and after they get the Baron, they end up losing the game. The fact that they got themselves in position to get that Baron, considering what had been happening that game, props to them. And Clyde especially, I want to highlight Clyde on the Pike play this game. Immaculate, finding a lot of those picks to give them the opportunity to win these fights, and even in that particular Baron play as well. Once again, it's Clyde, turning at the critical moments, finding the right picks to really enable DK Crew to get those leads.
That's what gets fans for teams, right? The confidence to go for that kind of Baron play, the willingness. I'm curious who kind of on the team is the one making that call, the one saying, all right, screw it. Let's just go for the Baron. It's the only win condition that we have at this point. Maybe at some point we'll get a chance to talk to some of the DK crew and get their insights on that. But that is it for the first series. RBM, thank you so much for subbing in last minute. You got straight out of bed, jumped in the shower, hopped on broadcast, and you knocked it out of the park. So I want to give you the podium to shill a little bit. Where can people find you? Where should people check you out if they want to see more RBM content?
Don't try to check me out. It's fine. I'll be back on the desk eventually. Just see me there.
Just see you on the desk at this point.
Okay.
I mean, if we'll bring you back, you got to review that whatever handbook that production sent you. Just to make sure you don't continue flaming players live on broadcast.
I love all the players. It's so much fun. I always love my opportunities that I get on the desk. Hopefully, I'll be able to cast sometime eventually too. Build up some reputation inside of that, because I got to do that at Gateway, and it was super, super fun. So as always, thank you so much to Unified for having me on.
All right. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on the desk, RBM. And with that said, I believe I'm a little lost on the run of show right now. Sorry, everybody. This is my first time hosting RMC. Buy time while I look.
Okay, I mean, right now we're kind of done with the first one. We're just waiting for the next set of games here. It's
Perfect.
Supernova.
It was that
Miracle.
easy.
It's that straightforward.
Next series coming up after this, and we'll bring on our next guest analyst, Incon. RBM, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll be right back after this.